All societies have languages in which certain spoken sounds convey certain meaning. This is verbal communication. Writing too is a verbal communication but in a different way. When we talk about writing or a script, we mean that spoken sounds are represented in visible signs. The way I communicate with you just now is a verbal communication. Writing is also a verbal communication, but in a different way. Suppose if we were in the classroom, or if I told you to write down the notes I have dictated, you wrote it down in your notebook, and you can see it with your eyes. And in that way, we communicate what I have told you or what I have dictated. You wrote it down in your notebook, and you can see it with your eyes later, and that way we also communicate verbally. So writing too is a verbal communication but in a different way. Verbal communication chu to na hetia ka class to na ka teaching te dan te jane thil ka so in lo hai thaga in lo shat te ka verbal communication verbally in ka bon tong kai in ka communicate chu ni writing hi verbal communication ni the na anei ve ni chu ta chuan writing a ve thong chuan verbal communication ni the na chu ka soi chwa te in lo zia thak mi te in lo mu le khan kan in communicate thaw ni writing mangin te na anita chu ba chan writing is also a verbal communication. uh, how do Mesopotamians develop writing? Why is writing developed by the Mesopotamians? Next point, we will see that first of all, what writing material has been used by the Mesopotamians? They wrote on tablets. That the tablets they use will be very much different from our today's tablet, but Mesopotamians wrote on tablets. These Mesopotamian tablets had been written around 3200 BCE, and in the beginning it contains pictures and signs. Mostly, we find 5,000 lists of oxen, fish, bread, loaves, and different kinds of things have been written down in the tablets. But we do not find a script or an alphabet type of writing, but mostly signs and pictures. And writing began when society needed to keep record of transactions at different times and involved many people and a variety of goods. The reason why Mesopotamians developed writing or they started writing is that they wanted to keep transactions. We know that Mesopotamian is a very vibrant culture, a very rich civilization, and because of that, commercial system of so in the society, commerce have been used during that time very much. Because of that, in order to keep records on what they sold and what they bought, they started writing down those different lists of things they bought or they sold or they have stocked. And because of that, writing started in the Mesopotamian society. Mesopotamia ha win writing and development san ber pakhat chu arama hausa agriculture ate pastoralism ate ram dang te ne insum don ton na ate an rama hausa ma ema I khopui nun po an tem ma ni chumi ni wang chuan society an kho chunga an ram chunga khatianga leile shalang chi te alo tamta wang khan record da na nan lo do ta ti chuan atira chuan kan se tong khan chang lem te sangha lem te thik te ang khan thil lem sang sang kha chin chana nan hang thin masikle tablet ta khan an ziak thin phutani ti chuan khatiang khan mi tam taka involve boka alo chin cha tu no mangaya alo ziak tu an mangaya I khatiang khan mi tam taka involve tel bokta chu Mesopotamian in writing and develop choda na chu ni ta ni chuan on what material did the Mesopotamians wrote? Mesopotamians wrote on tablet of clay. What writing material has been used is that they wrote on tablet of clay. How was the clay made by the Mesopotamian scribe? Scribe is the one in Mesopotamian history. In the beginning, there were few people who could write on the tablets of clay. So those people were known as a scribe. Not everyone could write during that time. Only some specialized people can wrote it. So because of that, they were known as a scribe. A scribe would get clay and pat it into a size he could hold comfortably in one hand. He would carefully smoothen its surfaces with the sharp end of a reed cut obliquely, like this. With the sharp end of a reed cut obliquely. Okay. He would press wedge shape, that is cuneiform. Wedge shape cuneiform is the script used by the Mesopotamian. Cuneiform meaning is that in page 34, in the left corner, you will find the explanation of cuneiform. Cuneiform is derived from the Latin word cuneus meaning wedge and forma meaning shape. So, Mesopotamian script was a cuneiform, which is a wedge shape. And wedge shape has been explained by scholars that wedge shape looks like nails. Okay, nails. So these cuneiform signs were pressed on to the smoothened surface while it was still moist, while the tablet was still moist. Once dried in the sun, the clay would harden and tablets would be almost as indestructible as pottery. When African record said the delivery of pieces of metal had ceased to be relevant, the tablet was thrown away. Once the surface dried, sides would not be pressed onto a tablet, so each transaction, however minor, required a separate written tablet. So each transaction occurred by the hundreds at Mesopotamian sites, and this is because of this wealth of sources that we know so much more about Mesopotamian than we do about the contemporary India. They wrote on tablets of clay. Once the tablet had dried, it was not useful anymore. Nothing could be pressed onto the dried surface. So because of that, the Mesopotamians used to throw away the used tablets and they used to write on a new one. So because of that, during the Harappan time, during the Mesopotamian history, we find lots of tablets, and this gives us so much useful information about the Mesopotamian history and culture. That is why we could study all these development of writing, system of writing, uses of writing about the city life. Many things we have learned from the Mesopotamians because of their writing on tablets of clay. Mesopotamia ho chuan hluma an ziak a hlum an a ziak thiam bi kan omta khati hunla khan mi zong zong Mesopotamian zong zong khan ziak an thiam lo ni a ziak thiam bi ati thiam bi khan oma chu scribe an ti thina chung ho chuan kuta an kin nuam tok om velin hlum an han ti siama chu an han ti mang te ka chu ta chuan read an nge oblique shape an ka ta khan an ziak lu thina i kha hluma kha ala hnon lai zia tur ni ta ni aro to no chan em ma zia thei to lo wa chuan an hman to nuwa khang kha an paile mi thina ni tang kai to lo huna chuan tin Mesopotamian ho horop kan ti hi cuneiform ania cuneiform chu wedge shape ania asoifia na chu ti chuan wedge shape an soifia le na chuan perek ang hi ani wedge horop an ti chu perek sign hi perek lem perek ang hi ang bere an tia Mesopotamian horop chu cuneiform horop landa na chu ni ta ni ti chuan khatiang khan thil tam tak an zia ka wangin Mesopotamian ho hun lai khanin tablet sakha sangtel zate lakha tam tak a ro to pai zela thar zia le zela ngai wang khan khatiang khan an hmang thin ta information kan mu tam phai em ni an tablet chan no pai to kho ma kha archaeologist an han lai chhuak le chu ta tawchan Mesopotamian ho history and culture and society and life a khatam tak tu na kan zir lai zong song hi kan sha theina chan pakhat ani ta khati hun lai civilization om ve Egyptian civilization kan ti te Indian civilization Harappan civilization kan ti ate khan khatiang em literature amo written documents amo kha mo tur om ve mang lawani Mesopotamian su the writing and no develop wang khan an chung cha hi tam takan sha thei pha ani and later when they developed writing they not only use it for transaction of goods later they use it to not for keeping records but for dictionaries, giving legal validity to land transfer, narrating the deeds of kings, and announcing the changes a king had made in the customary law of the land. So, slowly and slowly, writing began to develop not only for transactions, not only for business purposes, but to write the laws given by the kings. They write dictionaries, so they used to write for legal validity as well. So, they started developing writing for different purposes. Okay. Next is the system of writing. What system has been used by the Mesopotamians? The sound that a cuneiform sign represents was not a single consonant or vowel such as M or A in the English alphabet, but syllables, say pot or la or in. Mesopotamians script is not like the English alphabet. A, I, E, A, E, I, O, U, but it ran into syllables. That means 3 or 4 words put together, 2 words put together. So their script is a very difficult one. Thus, the sign that a Mesopotamian scribe had to learn ran into hundreds, and he had to be able to handle a wet tablet and get it written before it dried. So writing was not a very easy task for a scribe during that time, because their script was not a single alphabet like the English alphabet, but it was a syllables. So because of that, Mesopotamian scribe had to learn to write hundreds of signs and syllables while the clay was still moist. So it was not an easy task to write during the time of Mesopotamia. So writing was a skilled craft, but more important, it was an enormous intellectual achievement, conveying in visual form the system of sounds of a particular language. Writing was a skilled craft, and more important, it was an intellectual achievement, conveying in visual form the system of sounds of a particular language. What they have spoken out has to be written down in the tablets, and so it was not an easy task, and that not everybody could write during the Mesopotamian time. That is the system of writing. Mesopotamian zia dan kalphung a hi English alphabet a hey vowels te consonants kan nei ang hi ni lauta ni a e i o u kan han tiang si te a b c d kan tia horop mal rem kho ma thu chhuak ang hi ani velowa syllables ni ta ni chumi am zia chu thumal ni lovin hey horop thumli nga in kok te lo ni ta I khatia ang kha Mesopotamian ziak thia ma te khan clay aro ma a khatiang sain tam taka kha zia alu angai thin ta chuwang chon thil ol samani lawa tablet aro ma zia alu nge nge te angai ni chumi ni wang chuan Mesopotamian hun la khan thil zia hi thil ol samani lawa chu mei ba ka hi mimmal ina a hlotlin na liaw lawa ngai ni khatiang ziak thiam ziak the kha chu a chan chu an soidu te an thinglunga omte an chin chha du kha mu theya ziak le turan ni wangyan mimal hlotlin na a chhar sak ani thin ani e an writing system kha I har se em ani. So that is the system of writing. Next, literacy. What was the literacy rate of the Mesopotamians? Very few Mesopotamians could read and write. Not only were there hundreds of signs to learn, but many of these were complex. So if a king could read, he made sure that this was recorded in one of his boastful inscriptions. For the most part, writing reflected the mode of speaking. In the Mesopotamian system of writing, writing reflected the mode of speaking. And in page 35, literacy, you will find the writing skills of the Mesopotamians. You will see the example there. To my Lord A speak, thus says your servant B, I have carried out the work assigned to me. And we have found a mythical poem about creation. And here we see that let these verses be held in remembrance and let the elder teach them. Let the wise one and the scholar discuss them. Let the father repeat them to his sons. Let the ears of even the herdsmen be open to them. Very few Mesopotamians could read and write. That means literacy percentage is very low during that time. However, how did this writing developed and how did it spread? How did knowledge has been transferred from generation to generations? And we see that here below in their mythical poem, we found how they have transferred their learning, their knowledge to other people. And we see that if a king could read, he will make sure that that is included in his inscription, that a king could read. So that was an intellectual achievement, as we have mentioned in the system of writing. Mesopotamians so literacy percentage to niam em ti chat thena chanchu Mesopotamians bitlem te hian an chhat tham an ziak tham ani ti ani matinge a chanchu sign tam tak zia tur oma zir tur om boka tablet aro ma zia lu nge nge angai boka chuwang chuan ziak le chhat tham an tam lem lo ani ama ro chu lal ti khan ziak amo chhar an lo thiam lo chuan an chan chin zian a hian nge nge in soi thena an ziak til nge nge thin ani ti ani tin Mesopotamian so writing system a chuan an trong rig ang hian an ziak thin en tirnan tun lai huna chuan not kan copy pan a point poimo zia tur te kan ti ta a not zia dan tur kal phung te om vek tin letter kan zia pon nge lekha kan in thon pon om zenein kan du ang kha kan sei me ni mase Mesopotamian hun lai chuan an tung ang kha an ziak thla thin ani chu example da sei kha he tirnan he ta te hian lalpa khan a chhia ro hne na ti tur ro peta a chuwa chu tun lai ang chu ni se nge formal de letter kan zia ka nga chuan ten to the honorable te kan tianga chuan I have finished the task you have given to me te khana ta pa yours faithfully ti ang kha kan zia me tur ni ta ma se ani a chuan ni lo writing reflected the mode of speaking an soi an trong kalphung ang kha zia ka an ziak thin chu zia an man chan tira an ti dana ni ta he ta po hian ati kherta lalpa kha e angina data ani kha servant b alo ni ta chu wang chuan a soi ang kha zia thlang ni ta he to my lord a speak atia thus says your servant b I have carried out the work assigned to me so I have carried out the khan zia me om takani lai khan ani chon an trong kalphung ang kha zia ka an mang thin ani chuan chu mi lo le chon an poema landana chuan ziak le charan tiam an ziak le chhar thiam an tlem ang ho in ngatinge Mesopotamian hoi an chung nun em si zirna ati thiam na te ngatinge an chung nun theina chana chu thu tiam an lo nei fe kani an thon thu a hian chu ta chuan heng an thu zir te an thu sha ta hi an chin chha ta tanga chat upa ten an zir ti chhong tur ani ti kan mu phatani mithiam te mithiam le bi inzir sang ten an sei ho thin tur ani te ni le pa in a fa ne na han chong thin tur ani tin chu chau chu ani lawa ran vul tu ran veng ram noi cheng thin education amo ziak le chhiar thiam na reng nei ro te beng po thleng nge tur ani chu mi hmang chuan thiam ne lo in pass on thin ani ziak le chhiar an thiam lo ani point kha mi hmang khan an lo in pass on thin ani te kha kan sha thei ta a chu chuan Mesopotamia rama writing a develop tir na same ma son tir na same mani that is the literacy condition of the Mesopotamians they in their poems we have learned that the verses should be remembered and that the elders would teach the younger ones. The wise one and the scholars would discuss among themselves. Father would repeat would pass on whatever he had learned from the elders to his sons. And then even the ears of the herdsmen should be open to them. They should even teach to the person who is illiterate the knowledge they have gained, and they need to spread it to everyone, even if they could not read or write. That is how writing has spread. Knowledge has been spread in the Mesopotamian society. Next, the uses of writing. How writing was made use during the time of the Mesopotamian. And regarding these uses of writing, here it is mentioned as a story base. So you have to mention the story when you write down the note, when you give answers to the questions, which you will get later on. Connection between city life and writing is brought out in a long Sumerian epic poem about Enmerkar. Sumer is one of the city of Mesopotamia, okay, and it is one of a big city during the Mesopotamian time. And in the uses of writing has been seen in the poem about Enmerkar. Enmerkar was the king of Sumer during that time. So Uruk is also one of the big city, and the king of Enmerkar had resided in the city of Uruk, and during his time he wanted to build a big temple. Okay, so in order to beautify the temple, then Barker had needed many important stones to beautify the temple, and one of the stones he needed was a lapis lazuli and silver. But that lapis lazuli and silver was not available in Mesopotamia, but it was available in the neighboring country. So he sent a messenger. Okay, that is the story about Enmerkar, which we are going to find in this point regarding the uses of writing. Enmerkar is associated with the organization of the first trade of Sumer. In the early days, the epic says trade was not known. Trade to insum don tonna kanti anghi. Enmerkar wanted lapis lazuli and precious metals for the beautification of a city temple and sent his messenger out to get them from the chief of a very distant land called Arata. Arata is a very distant land, but in this place, lapis lazuli and some precious metals have been available. So, and Marker wanted those particular stones and metals to beautify the temple. So, he sent a messenger to this very distant land called Arata. The messenger heeded the word of the king. By night he went by the stars, by day he would go by heaven's sun divine. He had to go up into the mountain ranges and had to come down of the mountain ranges. The people of Susa, a city below the mountains, saluted him like tiny mice. 5 mountain ranges, 6 mountain ranges, 7 mountain ranges he crossed. The Arata was a very distant land, so here we find that at night he would use the stars, and by daytime he used the sunlight and traveled many mountain ranges. And sometimes he went up to the top of the mountain, and when he looked below, he will find a city, and the people in the city look like a tiny mice. So the passenger had to go to a very far away places to get the precious stones and metals. The messenger could not get the chief of Arata to part with lapis lazuli or silver, and he had to make the long journey back and forth. Ultimately, and again, carrying threats and promises from the king of Uruk. Ultimately, the messengers grew weary of mouth. He got all the messages mixed up. Then Enmarker formed a clay tablet in his hand and he wrote the words down. In those days, there had been no writing down of words on clay. The messenger went to Arata had after a long journey reached Arata. But when he met the king of Arata does not permit his servants to get what he wanted. So the messenger had to go back and forth to Arata and Uruk city. So after some time he was weary. He was so tired. So, but still, after he went so many times, the king of Arata still could not part with those precious stones and metals. So in the end, what Enmarker did was that he formed a tablet of clay and wrote what he wanted in the clay. And in those days, there was never any writing on clay or this kind of transactions going on between cities. Given the written tablet, the ruler of Arata examined the clay. The spoken words were nails. His face was frowning. He kept looking at the tablet. So when Enmarker's messenger went again with the clay tablets, written clay tablets, the ruler of Arata was very surprised to see such thing because it was the first time he saw written words on tablets. He examined the clay and he found that the script used look like nails. So I have mentioned earlier that wedge shape, the cuneiform script looked like nails. His face was frowning. He kept looking at the tablet, and in the end, because of his surprise, because of the things which he had never seen before, the king of Arata was able to to give the messenger what he wanted. So in this way, Enmarker was the first ruler of Mesopotamia who started using tablets and writing to get what he wanted. This should not be taken as literal truth, but it can be inferred that in Mesopotamian understanding, it was kingship that organized trade and writing. This poem also tells us that besides being a means of strong information and of sending messages afar, writing was seen as a sign of superiority of Mesopotamian urban culture. Tiwala story kan mo kan uses of writing an man tang kain na masaber ha kan mutani story based na ron siam ta and mark karahi nge uruk khwa Mesopotamia a khoro pui ber pakhat uruk kan tia an lala nita chuan manla ya Mesopotamia lalten an ro pui na ti lan nan man pakhat chu temple ro pui in saksia hi ni ta ni chuan temple an in sakro pui siang na sem e matin an rama omlo i thil hlu le thil moi a chei hi an ching em bokani ti chuan en mar kara po hian hun lai khan temple sa ni lian pui ro pui taka moi taka chei do ta ti chuan a chei na tura khan lung hlu lapis lazuli le silver ti te metals eng mokha i an ramala om ngai lo khan chei te la do ta ni aro pui na ti na na do bangin ti chuan chu a thil du a chu heta ram na taka kho pakhat arata kan tia khan a thil du kha omani ti chuan achia hote batirta adam kha lalu to kha atlat zia soinan chuan tlang pang engi maza tlang engi maza takha akalangaya zana po achol lowa I arsi eng ringi nakala chuna ni eng ringi nakal le a tlang sang la ya thlen phei chuan hnuai khwan mi te phei chu heng sajutiat lek lek te hian azu muthina chu tiang ka mun la chuan batirani ti chuan tongkai na ba ti tir thina arata lal khana lo phal thin si lova ale le thina atir le thina nei nge du boksia voi tak tak kana hmu pe chana lo chawa tin at message te kha athu thona te kha asoi pol vek to a chaw to a shat pol vel vek to ti chuan enmar kar khana du kha mu thei si lovani ti chuan chumi hnuah chuanin enmarker kha be dung do lovani atopa chuan clay la a clay tablet la a thuwa ziak ta ti chuan atir le ta ni ti chuan arata lalin khan kha avoi khatmu na alo ne tin ziak an la mungai lo reng renga ramdanga phi chuan an la shelo shim shimani ti chuan arata lalin kha me an mo kha a clay ta kha an en non le an en na anga ti ber chu athu ziak kha enge perek ang hi ati berani anga ina shelo re engi omsia po shi chuang lo masim mak ati lu tungna ba a surprise tungna awang khan ama alo phalto lo re ta alo phalto lo kha writing mang khan thil mak thil dang dai an pungai lo ni wang khan arata nal khan alo petani an ketani ma sia no pa se kha he hi chu thodik po ni kher lo wang ama ro chu he thon thui na soi tu ma chu Mesopotamia hun lai khan lal te hian sung don an kalpui veka ziak te po hi an control veka ni ziak tur te thu ziak tur kan te chelal kuta veka omani chu wang chuan I hemi poi mina se tum pakhata chu Mesopotamian ho hun lai khan writing kan ti hi thil chin chha nan te message in thon nan te tin Mesopotamia hi civilization chung nung le changkang ani mi aya filoran ni ti lan tir na na man tu na sei lan tum na ni tia khani so that is the uses of writing. Next you turn to page 85. Page 85. Here we will see cities in Mesopotamian culture. See, I have told you in the beginning that in this class we will omit most of the city life of the Mesopotamians since writing is much important than the city life. But cities in Mesopotamian culture, here also in story base we will find how Mesopotamians had valued city life. Cities in Mesopotamian culture. Here you will get a question. Here also we find a story based about the king of Mesopotamia. Question you will get is explain how the Mesopotamians valued city life. Mesopotamians value city life in which people of many communities and cultures lived side by side. After cities were destroyed in war, they recalled them in poetry. The most poignant reminder to us of the pride Mesopotamians took in their cities comes at the end of Gilgamesh epic, which was written on 12 tablets. Gilgamesh is said to have ruled the city of Uruk sometime after Enmerkar, a great hero who subdued people far and wide. He got a shock when his heroic friend died. He then set out to find the secret of immortality, crossing the waters that surround the world. After a heroic attempt, Gilgamesh failed and returned to Uruk. There he consoled himself by walking along the city wall back and forth. He admired the foundations made of white bricks that he had put into place. It is on the city wall of Uruk that the long tale of heroism and endeavor fizzles out. Gilgamesh does not say that, even though he will die, his sons will outlive him, as a tribal hero would have done. He takes consolation in the city that his people had built. So, here, with the story of Gilgamesh, we find how the Mesopotamians had valued city life. If their cities were destroyed during war, they still recalled them in their poetry through writing. And we find that Gilgamesh was a king after Enmerkar in the city of Uruk. And during this Gilgamesh time, his story has been written in 12 tablets. And in one of the story, we find that Gilgamesh was a great hero. He was a very wise king and a very brave king. So he subdued people far and wide. He goes into war with the neighboring countries. But one incident has shook him very much. His heroic friend died. And when his friend died, Gilgamesh was so shocked that he wanted to live forever. So he searched the whole world he traveled the whole world searching for the secret of immortality. He wanted to live forever. He don't want to die because the death of his friend shook him so much. So he traveled all over the world searching for the secret of immortality, but he failed since there is no secret of immortality. So after he come back, he toured all over the city, and there, after going back and forth into the city, he began to admire the bricks. He began to admire the beautiful city his people has built for him, and there he found consolation in the end. That is how the Mesopotamians had valued city life. Even in time of grief, Gilgamesh was able to find consolation from the beautiful city the people had built for him. Mesopotamian saman khopui nun an choi sang an ngai hlu an ngai sang em ta ni an ngai hlu em an khopui hi in do na awang alo tlak chha to pon an thon thu mang te thu ziak mang te hian an la an shiat ring na hi an la ziak chhuak thin ani ti chon Mesopotamian sen an khopui an ngai poi mo em an ngai sang em ani ti kan cha da pakhat chu Gilgamesh chung chang a hani Gilgamesh thon thu hi he alal ram chung chang a hi trap tablet som pahnia zia ani ta chunga chon tablet pakhata thon thu an se a chan chin an zia chuan ama hi mi huai sen lal huai sen takani bangin mi tam taka hne la ka mun tam taka huai sen ma mi a hne na se mani aral ai indo na te be na se ta a indo na a kal a ma chon reng reng khan hne to tak zel ani ti thin ani ama ro chu khatia nga ro pui taka om lai chuan an indo na thina a thian huai sen tak a kong nei kha a thita ni chuan a thian pa thin huwa chuan atwar na me ya thi ve kha du to lo bani dam reng kha adu ta ti chuan khovel hun sang changa jin kwalila dam reng na secret of immortality hi a omang a thi theilo na hi a om ring ta ti chuan khovel hun sang hi a fang chhuwa ka ta chuan thi theilo na thuru ka mo thi theilo na dam doi mo hnim mo enge mo kha omina ring ka ta azong na se ma se khovel a fan chhuwa nuwa po kha thi theilo na thuru kha ma om lo ni ti mu chhuak ta ti chuan a khwa lo hol eta ni a chan pa thi a ui boxi a khwa har boxi lung leng boxi khan ti tura shelawa ti chuan khopui dung le wang kha fang chhuak thin ta ni chu te a fan na khan khopui moi zia te an brick man that zia te tin ange a chei moi na tin reng te kha an ena a khwa mi pui te na kha khopui kha te anga din tura a ma na no thona sajate zoi in khati zong khan a kho har nem tur khan a zong ani tin khatyang ate na e kho har ate na khanin thi thelo na om lova eng tik nia ma chuan ama gil gange nge po kha ni ala thi ve don ani ma se chu mi ma song chan da kina chan a thi nga a fa ten a ro ten an la ron ro de nga a fa ten la te an la thove ang chu kaldan phung po ani ama ro chu ala dam hun chunga hi chuan a khopui moi tak ami tena thnem ngai tak te matak anlo sakte pi le po huna tang khopui moi tak anlo ne an che boys de khami a lung oina akha ani chon azong huta a chu Mesopotamians tena khopui nun an ngai hlum da na chu ni ta ni chuan last point legacy of writing what legacy has been given to us by the Mesopotamians legacy of writing moving narratives can be transmitted orally but science required written texts that generations of scholars can read and build upon. Moving narratives, things which could move, can be transmitted orally. Hey, thil chireng ang chi te, heng ang chi te hi chu tong kain soi the fia thei vek ta ni mi te ashil chon le thei vek en ti nan saba om dan chu zia khera ngai lo I arong te a thlo dan te a thlom dan te a hmui om dan te soi thei vek ma si science bi ki chu I oral tong ka ding ta soi thei ani lo zia ka in hu chwa chi zia ka in han chon chi ani ti asoi na ni ta ni in regarding science that cannot be done like moving narratives many things which could move can be narrated orally for instance like for example we can describe a bird without writing it we can orally describe how about how many feathers it had what color it had so everything could be such moving narratives could be transmitted orally but science could not be transmitted orally it has to be written down perhaps the greatest legacy of Mesopotamia to the world is its scholarly tradition of time reckoning and mathematics. Greatest legacy of Mesopotamia to the world is its tradition of time reckoning and mathematics. Time reckoning, date, year, time in a clock. All these have been discovered by the Mesopotamians and leave it to the world. So that is the greatest legacy left behind by the Mesopotamians. Dating around 1800 BCE are tablets with multiplication and division tables, square and square root tables, and tables of compound interest. Here you will find the example given below. This square root table has been made by the Mesopotamians. And next you will find that if you work this sum given by the Mesopotamians, you will find the answer 1.41421296. And this is only slightly different from the correct answer 1.41421356, slightly different. Students have to solve problems such as the following. A field of area such is covered by 1 finger deep in water. Find out the volume of water. This example has been given here, and the reason why this has been given is that during the Mesopotamian time there is no calculator. Okay, there is no tablets, there is no computer, and difficult mathematical sums had been given during that time, and they could solve it without the help of these uh, uh, gadgets. But Mesopotamians could give almost a correct answer. The sums given here is also very difficult. They have a tablet to rely on, only that, but nothing else. But the mathematical questions given here are quite very difficult. Okay, so this shows how the Mesopotamians have been advanced in the field of science and mathematics. Hey, that's example na peka po yan square root the table na ron pe heta yan 1 plus 24 kan puta chuan Mesopotamian ho puna answer mo cha chu chungzo ka khani ta ni chuan tun lai thiam na mga answer dik tak e ro chu ngai zo ka me ni ta a in an lo nei chete ani a chan chu Mesopotamian so chung nun na hian ati lan chan na chan na chu Mesopotamian ho hun lai khan calculator te omlova computer omlova tablet te omlova all sam tak he te han chu chwa jong jong thi a thei lawani chumi pia lama paper le pen kan ja thak jong jong hi anani lo le ngala tablet ta aro ma a heng hi ja je la ngai ta chuti chong chan he tiang khopa dik deu tho answer hi an pe the ni he an problem solve to rang si te hi field ta oma chuta chon area khoi khoi lai mori khan hun jung ti atin tu ina chi ma tui chim zat atui san zo nga khate tur te lo ni ta han ngai to awang wang ula thil har sa tak tur ani ma se he hian ati lan to ma chu mathematics a khan Mesopotamia an lo sang em to ani mathematics mu chhuak to an ni he ang zong zong square root kan ti te tables timetable 2 ones are 2 kan ti 2 3 ones are 3 kan ti zong zong a hi Mesopotamian ho lo hu chwa ve ka kha ni ta ni chuan square te square root table kan ti te he ho zong zong science maths kan zir chi ang ho hi Mesopotamia ha bin an lo hu chwa ve ki alo ni tu ta ta to na maths kan zir la hi lo zir thei chau kan ni so the Mesopotamians had left behind a very wonderful legacy, especially in mathematics and science and astronomy. Okay, next, this is important. The division of year into 12 months according to the revolution of the moon around the earth, the division of the month into 4 weeks, the day into 24 hours, and the hour into 60 minutes. All that we take for granted in our daily lives has come to us from the Mesopotamians. Division of year into 12 months. We know that in 1 year we have 12 months from January to December. This has been devised by the Mesopotamians through the revolution of the moon and the earth. Then division of month into 4 weeks. We know that in 1 month there are 4 weeks, and then the day into 24 hours. In 1 day we have 24 hours. In 1 hour we have 60 minutes. All these things which we took for granted in our daily lives has been given to us by the Mesopotamians. Vo India hun bi kan siar dan zong zong calendar kan nei thei dan kum khata thasom pani om kan ti January tanga December kan siar ti Mesopotamian hoina thla le lei in hwal kal hwal dan atanga an lo zir chwa an lo sia chwa an lo mu chwa hi ani tin chu mai chu ani lawa ni khata dar ka som ni pali kan siam te chhun le zani in then te tin dar kar khata minute somru ko omani ti zong zong kan ni tin nuna ama alo ve mai mo kan ti enga ama kan lo ngai lem lo thil kan lo en liam mai ma se kan hun bi hemi tel lo hun bi chha ngai no reng reng lo hi Mesopotamia hobina an lo zir chwa vek khale arsi le ni kal dan zong zong ena heng zong zong an lo mu chwa lo ni a chu ma chu Mesopotamia hobian thil lut tak tun lai kho bena mishing te hi min lo mu cha tin zirna lama thiamna lama an lo san ja hi hemi mang hian kan mu thei ani these time divisions were adopted by the successors of Alexander and from there transmitted to the Roman world, then to the world of Islam, and then to medieval Europe. Mesopotamians discovered all these things, time recognition, and then they transmitted it to the Roman world, and then to the Islam world, then to the medieval Europe, from there to the rest of the world. So Mesopotamians had left behind a very important legacy for our today's world. Next, we have when solar and lunar eclipse observed by their occurrence was noted according to the year, month, and day. So too, there were records about the observed positions of stars and constellations in the night sky. Solar eclipse, lunar eclipse, which we know commonly known in our lives, all these also have been recorded by the Mesopotamians according to the existence of the year, the month, and the day. All these have been studied from the constellation in the night sky. Ka ok lem ni ok lem kan no ti to na kan shat ve tak em hi heng zong zong hi Mesopotamia ho khan van lam chan chen an zir na atang te khatyang khan kum khata eng ti ka nge lo thlen eng tik ni nge lo thlen eng tik khona nge lo thlen eng tik thla nge ti zong zong hi an tep le ta khan an lo chin chia ve ka chunga wanga kha ok lem ni ok lem kan ti te hi kan lo sha thei pha ani. None of these momentous Mesopotamian achievements would have been possible without writing. Amma ro chu tu na hemi zong zong chan chin hi Mesopotamian ho khan tablet ta khan lo ziak thin lo se kan shem mi alo thonga he hi khoi tanga lo chhuak nge engtin nge lo chhuak engtin nge an ho ti kan che thiam kan che don lo reng reng heng zong zong poi mo na chu an lo zia thin wang tablet an lo zia an lo pai a hnu a he ta le hnu te in sil to mi thiam tin archaeology hmang an mo chhale train heng zong zong hi kan che thei ani. All this information which we have learned just now in this lesson is possible because of writing, which was done by the Mesopotamians. If the Mesopotamians do not know how to write, all these records and information will not be possible for us to learn. But since they have learned the importance of writing and started writing, developed writing, we were able to know all these important informations about the Mesopotamian history and culture. Uh, Without writing, an urban institution of schools where students read and copied earlier written tablets and where some boys were trained to become not record keepers for the administration but intellectuals who could build on the work of their predecessors. We would be mistaken if we think that the preoccupation with the urban world of Mesopotamia is a modern phenomenon. Okay? All these have been possible because of writing. Mesopotamians were the first civilization who introduced writing and city life because of its rich culture, because of its geographical conditions. All these have been possible during the time of Mesopotamia. And once they developed writing, they began to train students in the schools. And these students had read and copied the earlier written tablets. And then here, while some were trained to become record keepers, some of them were built to become an intellectuals, a learned people, so that they could carry on what they have learned through mathematics, science, astrology. They could pass it on to the younger generation, and this had been passed on to the neighboring countries, neighboring civilizations, and from there the rest of the world were able to learn about this, and that in today's world we could read time and we could have proper management of time. And all this has been possible because of the Mesopotamians. This is an important lesson. Okay, for your assignment, you turn to page 47, and in page 47 you will find at the end of the textbook, you will find activity 4 here. Activity 4. You read the questions. Why do you think Assurbanipal and Nabonidus cherish early Mesopotamian traditions? And this answer you will find it in page 46 and page 47. Page 46, an early library. Here you will find Assurbanipal's work, how he designed a library and what was in his library. Okay, and page 47, an early archaeologist. Here you will find the story about Nabonidus, how he used archaeology in his lifetime to preserve the city. Okay, this will be your assignments. And the library, here you will read it out first carefully, and then in the third paragraph, you don't have to write down that. You will only write down copies by made of important texts such as the Epic of Gilgamesh. That will be enough. And what Assurbanipal had wrote in his tablet, you don't have to write it down. Okay, and here also regarding Nabonidus, he will take out only the important points. And this time, since we do not know when school will be open again, this time we will submit your assignment online. But this time, at the top of the first page, you will write here at the top of the page, you will write your name and roll number first. And only after that, you will answer the questions. Is it clear? You will write your name and roll number at the top of the page, and only after that you will write down the answers to your assignments. Kanchiangem school la hon thei do no awangin school kal thei huna sha tori no wa chu wan chon tu na assignment hi chu in paper notebook in zia huna khan heta atira answer in zia mind questions in zia ma khan top page top khan in ming le in roll number in ron zia kanga ti chuan and questions kha in chang chawang activity 4 kha in lo changang. Then I hope that all of you have submitted your first assignment in the school. Those of you who could not submit, you have already submitted through online. I have given you permission, so this time also you will have to submit your assignments, and date of submission of assignment I will notify you later. Okay, until the next class, bye bye.